All right. Hello, everyone. So I do a different one of these like openers every single time. So I'm always curious what happens. So that little do was fun. But anyways, welcome to the SDR Hotline, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Blackwell. But listen, this is not about me. I'm super excited to have the one, the only Nikki Ivey here today on the SDR Hotline. What's up, Nikki?
Hey, what's up? I'm so pumped to be here. You're like the best. I'm like a big fan. So
I'm on it. Okay, so I'm just gonna have my fangirl moment real quick. Like, I'm a fan. Like, you say it on LinkedIn, and I was like, yes, I hear you, and also, but the way that it works on my side of things, I'm a fan of you. So, yeah, I even switched my sweater so we can match. So, like, Tom, you're just like my big sis. Like, this is what it is. I've always wanted one, and here you are.
it's a whole moment. I'm into it. I have, when you reached out to me, I was really flattered because listen, right? This is your platform and you get to choose who comes on and who shares. And a lot of that like reflects on you and you're learning from the people that come on. So that you chose me was like really exciting. And I can't wait to get into what we're gonna get into today.
I know. I'm excited too, and I appreciate you for sharing that as well. I selfishly was like, all right, what can I do to even warrant your time to begin with? Because, well, one, I just see you're just doing so many amazing things, whether it's the content that you're coming up with. We've been in like shared spaces where you're another one of the panelists, or we did that lead feeder piece there. So I'm just like, I'm like slowly but surely I'm getting closer to Nikki, and like here we just have this kind of convergence, and I'm so glad that you're here. So how about this for the first question? Rather than ask you a question, tell me about yourself. I would love to hear from your perspective. What is a question you wish you got from people more often to start a conversation?
Generally speaking, I wish people asked me more. It's gonna be weird, but I wish they asked me more about sales processes and marketing processes. I think that, and you and I talked a little bit about this in our prep call. Um, the personality is there. She can talk, but at the same time, I'm doing some really exciting things, particularly around the SDR to AE handoff. And I like talking about it. But and not for nothing, people tend to ask me more about sort of the intangible stuff and the culture stuff. And that's certainly my strong suit. I would call myself an SME in sales culture. But yeah, I also really, really geek out on the sales development stuff. So
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that that's the question that got asked first, because I don't even think I would have known to ask you these questions to begin with. I can't remember where it was that I heard this, but you had talked about like what really has helped you in sales development world or in sales world was understanding how marketing works, and even just starting off from like, where does a lead come from? So I'd be curious maybe even to like hear how your background in other like departments or areas, especially in marketing, like what specifically has helped you in coming over into SDR land.
Well, I had the great fortune of, one of my first sales roles, right? Not the first, but one of my first B2B tech sales roles. I was, the acronym was MDR. So I was a market development rep for this company that was pretty much ahead of its time when it came to the relationship between sales development and marketing. So we were just in on all the conversations. The SDRs went to field marketing meetings to understand, who was getting invited to these events or, roundtables around the country that we'd be having and why. And we also had, meetings with the broader marketing team to talk about, what the play was on social and how we as SDRs played into that. So I was lucky to have access to a marketing team that I didn't have to seek out. But I learned very quickly after that role that it was something that wasn't being put in front of SDRs at large, right? And so, not only was it on the SDR in most other places to even think to say, hey, I need to spend time with the marketing team to get better at my job. It was also on them to build that relationship, because likely their SDR manager wasn't focused on, it didn't have time to be focused on, like, what is this relationship between marketing and sales?
Yeah.
But now in this player coach role that I'm occupying at M-Train, we're on the marketing team, which is different. We could get into that debate later if anybody wants to get at me. I know there's feelings out there about it, but
maybe for another day, because I just came from reporting into marketing. So
you have thoughts too.
I have thoughts.
It certainly differs by company, but where I am right now, like, it's sort of a full circle moment for me, where I've always sort of been excited. My degree is in broadcasting, right? So to an extent, that's content. Yes. That's storytelling, that's copywriting, and in business and B2B business, those happen most frequently under the marketing function. So I've been wanting to get back to it. And now that I'm able to put all those things together, I'm kind of having the time of my life.
I love that. That's amazing. And you had talked about something specifically around like content, right? I'd just be curious to hear, because I think one of the questions, let me pull it up. Let me pull this up. I just had to find it. No, that's
on this out for 20.
Oh no. Oh no. Here we go. Yeah. So I've, because we had a chance to like chit chat just a little bit before we went live. And it had this question here. Number one, congrats on being named LinkedIn Top Sales Voices Live. I'm not going to talk about the red box in the back. I'm not going to talk about it, but there, just in case y'all didn't see it. But you mentioned that, one part of what you think has helped you build up the following has to do with the content, right? But would love to just hear more about like what your approach has been, what your process is like, like what's the mindset that's enabled you to achieve the success that you've had on LinkedIn, especially?
Well, there was some failure that had happened. And I think there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn, and it's true, right? That ultimately success comes down to, how you respond to failure. And I found myself, when I was working at Qualia, and Scott Leese had done a really good job of, he would just voluntarily, when nobody had asked him to, and everybody else had gone home, he would have these optional clinics, right? And he would go through some of the presentations that people would likely have to pay for it, like, the conferences that he would be at. But anyway, so he did his LinkedIn, how to build a LinkedIn presence thing to us. And it really spoke to me. He had used a gentleman named Mark A. Smith as an example of how to show up as yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mark A. Smith does a really good job of talking about the adversity and things that he's been up against. And I saw how that resonated, right? But I still wasn't ready to like really tell my story. So if you scroll back, my early LinkedIn content is me in my car in the parking lot of Qualia, probably late for a morning meeting or on my lunch break. Just trying to find my people, right? So I thought, who else is experiencing some of the lesser talked about things that salespeople face in a sales culture? Who's talking about how they rebound from failure? Who's even talking about failure at all on this platform? This was a couple of years ago. And so I started talking about it, and I was trying everything. I was singing songs. I had a little bit called Theme Song Thursday. I was just cute commute is one of the things I called it, where it was like me driving to work saying something funny about sales. But anyway, the point was, who can I help and who can I form community with? And I didn't know what the community looked like at that time. But, once I started really opening up and talking about failure and talking about how I was overcoming it, that brought people to me and just sort of fed itself. So if I had to, think about any one thing in particular, I would say it's being community oriented. And if you look at the other folks on the list, right? Morgan J. Ingram, Kevin Dorsey, and a lot of the other folks, these are folks who are building communities. These are folks who are active in multiple communities, and they're serving those folks. And I think that's the key.
I love that. I love that. There's another question here that's gonna, I have to find them. I'm sorry, y'all. But here we go. I think this next question that gets brought up, like you talked about, like, just how to put this, just showing up authentically. I'm paraphrasing here, but like, what's helped you to, or what's enabled you to speak as freely as you do, especially about failure?
In my journey, we're just gonna get all the way into it, aren't we,
I told you we were.
In my journey with my mental health,
we had similar journeys in multiple ways. So like I can hold, like, I got you.
So survival meant telling the truth at a certain point. A sister can only keep so much bottled up. And when you look at what I was facing, what a lot of us face as salespeople, and then those of us who sort of exist at an intersection, right? Existing at an intersection of identities, identify as a woman, as a Black person, as a mom, as a seller. And so when you sort of have all of those things going on, then on the one hand, you're compelled to talk and tell your story. But on the other hand, right, you're protective, because the more eyes that are on you, the more eyes that are on your flaws. And so it isn't something where I endeavored, like, hey, I'm going to jump in here and capture the attention, hearts and minds of the internet, of LinkedIn. It was more like, I'm going to burn out if I don't find a source to fill my cup, right? Because my approach to selling already is empathetic. My default as a human being is empathy, right? And so what that means for a seller who's not attending to her mental health is that you're challenging yourself to give and to care, but only in one direction. And so on the one hand, you're like, give, care, all of these things for your fellow salespeople and for your buyers, but for yourself, don't you acknowledge those negative feelings. Don't you cry ever. Don't you ever be anything but perky and happy and what people want from you. And that didn't work. So I was like, all right, y'all. And I think most notably around the death of George Floyd. That's one of the most recent walls I hit with respect to, and I didn't even know that I was pretending, right? I think as Black people in particular, or people from marginalized groups, a lot of the time, you kind of get used to not talking about, especially things that are happening like out in society, not talking about things that are hurting you or things that are affecting you. Yeah. But I kind of had to, and because I had already been building a community with my LinkedIn followers and with other B2B sellers, I just felt like I was doing a disservice if I didn't say, hey, y'all, today is not a day I can smile. Today is not a day that it even feels like it makes sense to be talking about how to, up your open rate on your emails. And this is where I'm really coming from. And to my surprise, TBH, folks felt that. And once again, this community of sellers, linked arms, wrapped their arms around me, and those bonds of community started to strengthen even more. And it really does. That empowers me to keep going. I get messages from, particularly young Black men and women in my LinkedIn DMs telling me that seeing me on a platform, right, helps them believe that these things are possible. And I never thought of myself like that. I still don't, but I know how important it is to see somebody else on the path and have that light it for you. So all of those things are what, propel me forward. And this is beside the fact that, I am an extrovert, right? And I do naturally like to to talk. And I am most
your hands too. I love it.
all this, but that only goes so far. I just like anybody else need community and need to be lifted up, and this community has done that for me.
Oh my gosh, that was so much. I don't even remember what my initial question was, but yes to everything that you just said. There are so many things, right? There was I think like an invitation. We were talking about being like working with Scott Leese, right? And that interaction with with Mark A. Smith. And it's like, hey, there's this invitation that's here, but not quite sure if I'm ready to tell my story. Like, I want to be vulnerable, but I also want to like be guarded. And then even bringing in identities into that and like what that means. And there is a point, and I already told you this, Nikki, like, I feel like I came across your profile at the beginning of this year. Maybe it was like right around George Floyd, his murder. And so like, I mean, I'm like, okay, like here's this person who can just share authentically and vulnerably and in a way that I hadn't seen done and that I didn't even know was possible. I was like, I didn't think I was like, because here's the thing is like 2015, what's the guy's name? Freddie Gray.
Yeah.
In Maryland. He was killed like 2 days before I started as an SDR. And I remember being in the office, like like fast forward a few months. And I remember being in the office, like in the kind of common room area, watching CNN, and you're seeing that like the CVS on fire. And one of my coworkers was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they burning down their neighborhood? And I was like, you don't know that much, do you? And I remember because I was also like the only Black person in this like kind of WeWork type of thing. I was the only Black person that was there. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, how can anyone expect for me to show up at work right now? I was like, how is everybody okay?
Yeah. It's a whole other like layer of, and we kind of touched on this, at the, not you and I, but a few other Black sellers that you and I know in common, at the Selling While Black thing, right? Where it was like, what are some of the unique things to overcome that aren't obvious to people unless they've experienced it. And that is one of them, simply experiencing an event that affects the community that you identify with, that other folks really know. So for me, a lot of the time, often nobody else on the sales floor shared that identity with me.
Right.
And that's one part of it. But then to hear the opinions and then feel like because of your identity, you're at risk if you speak up.
Yes.
Like I've been in that place a lot. And again, for me, like this George Floyd thing was just like, I realized what a disservice I was doing to the other people that I worked with and to any Black seller that came behind me if I didn't say something. And it just goes back to what we see historically with how progress happens with respect to Black women. Yeah. It is thinking bigger than our own interests. And that I mean, history bears that out, right? I'm not saying like we have some kind of moral superiority, simply that history bears out this idea that these are things that we tend to consider because of our sense of connectedness to the whole. These are things, and how much we know that is a source of survival. These are things that we consider. And so, yeah, I saw it very clearly for perhaps the first time. Like, look, Nikki, anytime you don't, especially if you are excellent, anytime you don't speak up, you give permission.
Yes.
For other folks, maybe not to microaggress or oppress, but certainly to remain in the status quo. And I just decided, like, if it's going to be messed up like that, it won't be because I helped with it. You know what I mean? It won't be on my watch. So here we are. I forgot the question too, girl. Are we?
No, like, because we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about this in the prep. I'm like, where else are we going to go right now? Like, where? So here's, I got a segue. I think I got a natural segue.
All right. I'm ready.
No, because here's what I see is like, I'm going to use the word strong, but I don't strong, right? It's difficult to use, but like, how to put this? It's not just a strength, but there is such like an endurance to your character that has been built up. I think that's it. And so like there's such
I mean, I've been through some things.
You've been through some things.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yes.
So to an extent, Scott Leese talks about this a lot. Many people I know do. But I think folks are most familiar with his story, right? This idea that if you have been through some things in life, there's really not a lot of damage that somebody hanging up on you on a cold call can do. Not long term anyway.
Yes.
Right? Like, so I was in, and I don't know if I've shared this before, but I was in an abusive relationship with my high school sweetheart. Turned out not to be so sweet. And some of the things said to me every day in that relationship about what I was never going to achieve, who would never want me for any reason, right? I had internalized those, and that pain and what I had to do to overcome it is, you're right, it is something that sustains me, right? Which is not to say that I don't have tough times, right? But it is to say that I have to know that they're not permanent. And the work of that, right? Like how to apply that, that part doesn't come easy. That's the reminding yourself who you are piece that you and I discussed offline, right? Is literally having to tell myself, right? Look, dog, like you, Nikki, let's have a heart to heart. A few things, right, that you have survived. This can't be that difficult. And so then it just becomes a matter of finding things that make me feel confident, that remind me of a time when I felt I really believed that I could take on the world, and just keep trying to make myself believe it over and over and over and over again. And understanding that that's probably going to be, the work I have to do for the rest of my life, and just making peace with that. I think the mistake I made in my 20s, I'm 39, by the way. But the mistake I made in my 20s was thinking that external things would fix me on the inside, would make me more confident, would make me never turn back to feeling sad ever again. And that's just not the way it works, right? I just had to take hold of my own future and understand that it's just going to have to be something I work at every day. And it just is what it is.
So in Women Who Run with the Wolves, would highly recommend this for anyone, especially like folks who identify as women. There's a line in there that says, like, the work is to continue doing the work. That helped me. I think like that awareness like brought me so much more clarity, because like that, otherwise, whether it's in personal world or professional world, it's like I would constantly think like, when am I just going to be better? Like, when am I going to stop being broken? When am I going to be fixed? Like, whatever. And as soon as it said that, I was like, oh, okay, like now I have permission to just constantly see myself as growing individual.
Yeah. It's like that. And I don't know what you listen to, but that Janelle Monáe song, I like that. Ooh, that's the one, Gabrielle. she's talking, but there's this part where she's just speaking, and she says, I remember when I cut my perm off and you rated me a 6. I was like, it's like you were there, Janelle Monáe. But no, it's like she's talking about how she's the only one who has to believe that she is, great, that she is worthy. And that's what it all sort of comes down to, and that's once, speaking of the top voices thing, that's another part of the work that has started is, finding this balance between believing that I am great or destined for greatness, and then not believing the hype about myself. It's a thin line to walk, right? To try and protect myself and not become a mascot, and to try and keep actually achieving substantive results, because all of this content stuff is fun for me. Yes. And I happen to have an aptitude for it. Yes. But I'm out here trying to hit quota like the rest of us. You feel me? Like it's really not, just this. And you and I were talking about this the other day, right? Like, great, there's a personality there, fine, but how we're gonna get this money?
Yes, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, she's got a great personality, but like, can't she drive results? Yes, 100%. I wonder. I'm trying to trying to like feel out the question that I have, because we had talked offline. We had talked about being in the position. Let's say if it's anytime we start anything new, right? A new job, new role, SD, whatever else it is, like there is this ramp up time before you are performant. And even in that, like you can have a killer 6 months and who knows, I don't know, pandemic hits and like who like, so it's almost like how to even in the midst of not being at that kind of externally defined level of success, like what helps you even in the role player coach to be able to see yourself as like capable and successful and essentially not falling victim to I'm not at where I want to be right this very second, right? Like in when, right? But like what helps you with that?
So we have in sales over the last 3 years, really over the last 5, gotten really, really deep into the science of this profession. And for the folks for whom that is the fun part or the part that they relate to the most, that's a good thing. But for those of us who are artists, those of us whose success is driven often by, you know, enough discipline with the science, but mostly the art, you know, you can start to doubt the value of those intangibles. And that has started to happen to me. Like, you know, is being someone who inspires people even important if it can't be tied to revenue? You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's really difficult. That's a really difficult connection to make, right? It's hard to prove that because I inspire people, because I'm a galvanizing force on a sales floor. I used to say that on my resume. It's true. But because of that, right? Because I can't tie that to anything, it can get really, really difficult. And so what I have to do, especially in this player coach role, if we're not setting meetings, at first I have to make sure that, of course, the table stakes things are done, right? Have I delivered a framework? Have I showed my team exactly how to replicate the types of results that I've been able to see myself and that we can get? Yeah, if all that's in place and we're still, you know, struggling, what I've seen turn things around are those intangibles.
Yes.
Just something as simple as making a video, a 30-second video on a Monday to motivate my team, or, you know, shooting over a thank you, or sharing my own failure, right? In a way that connects with the rest of the team. That is valuable. And I have to challenge myself to still do that, even when the numbers aren't there, even when I'm not feeling my most confident, because inevitably what it always does is it gives right back to me. It gives right back to me. As soon as I, you know, have an unscheduled one-on-one with an SDR on my team, and, you know, I share something with her and she shares something with me, and she's like, man, I feel better about this work. There was a fear that was sitting on my chest and suffocating me, and you have helped lift that weight. And now I feel like my capable self. That is valuable. And I just had to stop needing some VP of sales to tell me that, some dashboard to tell me that, and just let it mean what it means. Like it is as real as anything else.
Yes.
You know, and I don't even know how else to express it, but that's how I remain in touch with my value, even when the numbers aren't there, is to just pour into people.
Yes.
Pour into community, the things that maybe I need, or the things that I see that they need, and just let that love mean something. Because to your broader question, in my life, that is what it's been. That is what's been the thing that pulled me out of the muck and the mire, is remaining faithful, you know, holding on fiercely to my belief in love and the idea that good things can and will happen to me. And I know this is kind of corny to a lot of people, but, you know, it's the truth.
Yeah.
If you talk to people I've worked for before and look at my resume, it's got to be something other than a science that is propelling me. And I think that's what it is. I think it's this art of connecting with people and believing in the power of that.
Yeah. Someone on your team giving you a shout out. Thank you. I call it this. I call it the multiplier effect. I call it the team impact. Like, honestly, I was like, those are the people I'm looking for. Like, when I'm building out a team, I was like, listen, I can have a bunch of ICs, I can have a bunch of lone wolves. And yes, they're gonna get better, but like, are we really creating a unit? Are we creating a collaborative environment? Are we cultivating an ecosystem in which anyone and everyone is seen, acknowledged, and heard, and can grow and improve, right? And
me taking your brilliant face in my hands.
Yeah.
Gabrielle.
It's totally fine. But no, I mean, from my end, what I could see is, because I've managed teams where I've had one person come in and they rocked out. And what I started to see, though, is that the productivity on the rest of the team started to decrease. Like, people weren't as engaged. They didn't have the same levels of morale, right? Like, the quality of their work started to suffer. Mm-hmm. So like, were they, so like the other side of this is like, are people hitting their numbers right this very second? Maybe not, right? But like, are they improving week over week in different KPIs? Like, yes. Are they having something as simple as, are they doing more activities? Okay, wonderful. That to me demonstrates some level of increased engagement. And are these activities quality activities? Are they coming to office hours? Are they participating in meetings? Are they raising their hand and sharing ideas? Are they like hitting me up and asking questions? I'm like, so like, I would say like, yes, can you tie it to revenue? 100%. Right? Like, you can tie it back to people, and there are metrics around people that you can measure. So, yeah, so important.
Teaching me stuff.
Listen, yeah, so sometimes you just, I'm sure you can have the best team on the court and a bogus coach, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then you can have folks who could be seen as somewhat mediocre with an amazing coach who attunes to them and sees them, right, and encourages them and pushes them and challenges them, and is really like, hey, listen, I am in service to like the realization of your highest self. And like, that's when we see people move mountains.
Yes. So on that piece, I think I was telling you this about, I'm late, y'all. I am so late. I recently joined Kevin Dorsey's Patreon.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay.
So shout out to KD. But so I did it on the heels of this webinar that he had done with Scott Lees and Richard Harris, where he was talking about coaching someone up, right, off of a PIP or out of a month of missing quota, and he was talking about how the mistake that novice leaders make is, say this rep got to 50% of goal in the previous month, a novice leader will, give this ultimatum 100% or bust, right? That following month. And the question that KD was asking was like, if 50% was what this person achieved last month, is not 80% a win in the coming month? And of course the answer is yes. And so I thought, like, I have to start applying that to myself on a day-to-day basis. Mm. And that's really when I think of leadership, right? In addition to, yes, giving this framework, it is a lot about inspiring and motivating people to look in and find their own framework, because chances are, in the case with me sitting in on that webinar and hearing KD say that, they kind of already know what they want to do and what they can do and what they must do.
Yes.
But it's just so difficult if their confidence is suffering, sometimes it's hard to even say out loud, I'm going to get 80% of my quota next month, because you don't see the path. You don't want to lie. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. And it's just too painful to talk about. And so when he said that, I was like, what parts of my life was I at 50% last month that I've been trying to break my neck to get 100%, but I can feel how that's killing me. that I need to dial it back to this 80% and just get the win, get the completion, as Justin Michael would call it. And so that's, I think, the modern SDR leadership in particular.
Yeah.
Right. If we're really gonna serve these people who are coming into this profession who deserve thoughtful leadership,
yes,
then that's what it has to be. It can't be this old school, like, oh, you didn't make your quota, I'm just going to throw my hands up and tell you to double the amount of activity that you did last month. Like, that's just not going to work. We have to be inspiring people. Actually, we have to be showing them a way, in the way that I've started to do, besides the things I mentioned before, right? These impromptu one-on-ones and just encouraging people, is putting it in my calendar. Any little thing that I really want to accomplish, not just wish I could do, but anything that I want to make part, anything where the results of which I want to be part of what my next year looks like. When I was doing my calendar for moving into 2021, that's what I had to do. So I had to make room for content. I had to make room for engaging with other thought leaders, and for engaging with people in my ICP, and for, engaging with just folks who follow me, all of those things. And I think, I'm not going to say I got it figured out, Gabrielle, but well, I'm feeling pretty confident about, going into the next year, just because I made myself see it, that because it can just feel like this nebulous thing in your brain. Like, there's not enough time in the day to do X, Y, Z. And until somebody shows you, well, if you do this at this time and that at that time and this on these days, then you can get all the things done that you want. Then you'll just keep living there in this inertia.
There's something I think is really, this kind of alludes back to something you had shared a little bit earlier, which was like that need, like you're going to burn out if you don't find the source that's going to fill your cup. This is the experience that I've been having. I don't know if this is something that you can relate to as well. Like, beginning of the year, I was like, all right, I felt as though I just wasn't in the right, like, I was like, I know what I need to do, but I wasn't actually in the places or around the people that were going to fuel me so that I can carry that out. So it wasn't like, it took time for me to figure out, okay, like, let me find my source of fuel, and then I can I can almost like scale it out. I can stabilize in order. So like my day, I've got 8 reps across 3 different time zones. So I start my day working probably around 8:30, and I finish around 8 or 8:30. I have 5 mentees now, and I have a puppy, and I like to do some kind of self-care every once in a while. If I was in a totally different environment, which I've been like 2 years ago, I'm like, I would have busted a long time ago. I'm not able to carry this. But I'm just wondering, like, how you're able to plan all these things out, right? So like, there's the work that you're doing, there's the success that you're in service to for the reps who are working with you. There's like the panels and the conversations and the content and everything. But like, what do you think it takes, like, to find one's fuel, to find one's source, to be able to carry out all those efforts?
I think you mentioned it, right? When you talk about environment, there's this thing one of the little mantras I've adopted, right? Fix the field, not the flower, right?
Speak my plants.
I see you. But so if a plant, right? You have these plants, right? If you have a flower and it is not growing to its potential.
Yes.
The problem is not the seed, it's not the flower, it is the soil and how you care for it. So if you're looking at your environment, I just did this exercise this weekend. You're looking at your environment and whether or not these are things that are helping you thrive or causing you to wilt, to extend the metaphor. That's how you get there. And for me, I have to do that because I'm gonna be honest with you, like, it doesn't occur to me all the time. Like, I'm not this person that's just like, oh, let me go and clean off my desk area. Let me make sure that everywhere that I work is nice and pretty and blah, blah, blah. No, it's typically cluttered. My brain is typically scattered. My brain is the equivalent of having like a bunch of tabs open on a laptop.
Oh my gosh.
Also, I have a bunch of tabs open on my laptop.
Yo, I've taken over the dining room table and it's a mess. It's a mess.
So I have to do that. And what I did this weekend, because you asked, right, is I decided like, what are these dimensions of my life that I want to, fix for 2021 or level up in, right? Because I haven't made it, y'all. I'm still out here trying to level up. And so I put it into these categories. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. This is the one for work, the little notebook to your question of how you get it out. You probably won't be able to see what's written on here. This says Sales Brother and Sisterhood. It's one of the communities that I work for. And that's SDR Defenders. This is personal development. And then the biggest notebook is family, right?
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do was write down the big ideas. Like, what are the outcomes I want to see in 2021 in each of these categories? Then I wrote down like what the tasks need to be, like what has to be in place that I can scale for each of those. And I've done that exercise before, and I typically just leave it at that. But this time I put it in a calendar. I put it in a big master calendar and said, okay, like time of day, day of week, right? Am I leaving myself time to get all of these things done? Like, first and foremost, am I waking up early enough in the morning? Am I going to bed? And I know that this all sounds to a lot of people, it could sound like obvious or a no-brainer, but the way my mind is set up, like,
listen,
I have to. It's been really working out.
The number one challenge I hear from my reps is time management. That's the number one challenge. That's the number one thing we talk about most of the time. Like, how am I going to be able to get things done in this time of day? And I think I was just listening to KD talk about this, where or who's just writing about this, talking about time management for his managers. So like, yeah, I mean, it could be obvious, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people have it figured out.
Is it possible for me to share my screen? I want to show what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you should be able to. Let's see. Can you?
I have a little button here.
Button away.
It is. Okay, cool. All right. We're doing it live, y'all.
I love it.
Okay.
First screen
master calendar. You can see my screen now? Okay.
Yes.
So here's what I'm talking about with this master calendar. So what I've done is I went in, let me show you I'll do next week since this is all grayed out. But I said, look, what time do I need to wake up? And what I've done before, when we talk about time blocking specifically for SDRs, a lot of the time people are talking about, I've done this mistake where I set like a 3-hour block for myself to make phone calls, right? It was wishful thinking. I'm not going to sit for 3 hours and just make phone calls. It's not going to happen. But I was like, listen, how do I get 100 pieces of activity out, multi-thread in a day? And how do I get all my prospecting done and content creation in a week? So I have segmented out the sources of prospects, right? So this is going to be Mondays for reheats, Tuesday based on intent data and event follow-up. Wednesdays are, referrals and people who interacted with our content. And then Thursdays is just with my broader LinkedIn network. And I left myself Fridays because I know I actually hate prospecting on Fridays, as y'all saw by pajama prospecting last Friday, and decided, what if I just did the fun stuff, right? So creating content for SDR Defenders, creating content from my businesses, from M-Train's content and micro stuff for me to share on my LinkedIn, and then content for the communities that I'm a part of, right? This here is for Sales Brother and Sisterhood, and there's a bunch of others. And so the last little step, and then I'll stop sharing my screen, is I actually went in and put how much activity of what, right? So just in 1 hour, 10 emails from this category. The next hour, 20 phone calls from this category. After lunch, to extend this this multi-thread idea, after lunch, 10 video emails, 10 video LinkedIn messages. You get the idea. And then I also put in here time to engage with my network and reflect and then plan for the next day. I often use that planning for list building. But this is what I mean. Before I created this, I went into my day a lot of the time with just this broad idea of, I gotta set meetings. I gotta do this. And then it all just got very, very jumbled and scary. And I had convinced myself that there wasn't enough time in a day or in a week to do all of the things that I need to get done for the outcomes that I want for 2021, outcomes that I want for my team even. But when I put it all first on paper in my little notebooks, and then in this calendar in this codified way, then I was like, yeah, I see it. Of course I can get 100 pieces of activity out in a day, and it can be multi-threaded, and I can be using video, and I can also be in these communities and helping people the way that I want. And once I was able to see it, now it's just a matter of, to what extent do I adhere to doing what I say I'm going to do? And I'll be honest, this was the first week. I probably hit it at about 50% of what's on that calendar, but it's 50% better than what I did last week. And maybe next week I'll be at 80% of the calendar. And by 2021, I'll be executing it, at 100%. And I know that these are the things that are going to get me at least in the running for the outcomes that I want. And so that little tweak has got me excited about it. It's not some sales manager or VP of sales' idea. It's not something somebody's making me do. It's, what do I want to be spending my days doing? What do I want the outcomes to be? And how can I make that fun for myself?
I love that. I feel like what you just described was literally the embodiment of self-possession. I kind of want to flip this into a question of like, how to put this. One of the things that I'm observing with some of the reps that I've worked with, and most of the time these are folks who are very early on in their careers, and then also younger, right? So maybe like early 20s as well. And one of the things that I feel like is a little bit of a challenge is, hey, like, how can I take ownership? Like, how can I take, how can I really possess my full agency within my work, especially as an SDR? So I don't know what the question is, other than like, how would you recommend someone really accept that invitation to say, hey, listen, like, your success is your own, and how you can get guidance, but truly it's up to you to figure out your pathway to success?
I'll tell you what opened it up for me. It was a couple of things. A couple chance encounters I had in San Francisco earlier in the year. One with Sarah Brazier, the other with Carolyn Betts of Betts Recruiting. Mm-hmm. And so when I ran into Sarah, I was a mess and she was nice to me. I was like, let's be real. So my contract, I was at 6 Cents, and the contract was ending, and we had a really successful run. We were gearing up they were announcing a round of funding. And so we were drumming up awareness around that and growing their social pages and all of that. And it was a really successful run, but it ran out. So I was upset about that. And I happened to be in San Francisco, and she was kind enough to meet me for coffee. And I was just like, gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm just so sad. And she was like, she bought me a ticket to MoMA. I'd never been before, to the Museum of Modern Art there in San Francisco, and was just super kind. And I had seen her content and thought she was like one way.
Yes. And
she is that way. She is so much more. And the absolute frigging steel in her eyes and ice in her veins that I was confronted with in having a conversation with her about, because she was at this time working on transitioning from SDR to AE. Mm-hmm. And she was just so determined about it, and nobody was going to tell her no. She was going to jump through the hoops and do the work and just be undeniable. And I was like, that's the level I have to be on.
Yes.
I really have to like mean it.
Yes.
When I say that I want to achieve these things. And so that just kind of, it just kind of stayed with me. And then when I met Carolyn, I was wearing my sales hat that I got from Bravado. She sees me from across the bar in San Francisco. I don't live in San Francisco. I was just there for a week, and it happened to be at this place that she was at. It was so weird. She's like, hey, do you know Sahil? And I'm like, she's talking about Sahil of Bravado, Sahil Mansuri. And I'm like, not personally, but so anyway, right? Because I'm wearing this hat and we have this chance encounter. I meet this woman, and she just was like, in this one conversation, encouraging me to see this one thing ending that was very painful for me.
Yeah.
As an opportunity to do what I really am called to do. And it just, you know, I hadn't, for a long time, I would say things out loud, like I don't want to be in leadership, you know, because, you know, I'm too nice to manage people or whatever. And now I know, like, that's dumb. I don't feel that way anymore. But, you know, just having other people who have achieved things I want to achieve, look me in my face and tell me in no uncertain terms, like, yeah, girl, you can do it. So Sarah ended up introducing me to Dan Gottlieb of Topo. And he was like, Nikki, like, how do you want to spend your days? That's what it comes down to. Like, what do you actually enjoy doing? Mm-hmm. Do you believe you have a right to pursue doing what you enjoy doing? Because if you don't, then like, that's really sad and I can't help you. Do you know what I mean? But like, if you have just enough confidence left, no matter what's happened to you, you only have to muster enough confidence to say out loud what you really want to be doing.
Yep.
And then just keep saying it and then figure out who else is doing it that you can learn from and then just do it. And you don't have to even think about doing it fearlessly. There will be fear and that will be okay. It can fuel you, right? It can draw other people to you who see you doing something that you're scared of and doing it despite the fear. So that's what happened. I thought of, how do I want to spend my day? I want to be helping salespeople. I want to be helping, you know, people like myself have better experiences, more inclusive experiences at work. And so I just started to, before I had access to a job where I could do that, I started doing that with my content and with SDR Defenders. And then, you know, I got the opportunity to start doing it at M-Train. But if you don't believe that even if you're unemployed, I was unemployed for 6 months during this year. If you're unemployed right now and you're having a hard time, you think you should just take whatever role comes up. Look, I don't know your life, so I'm not going to tell you not to take a role, but try and find in yourself just enough confidence to believe that you still have the right to enjoy your work and pursue that. You might as well. You're going to be putting in the effort to get a job anyway, right? Put in the effort to find some place that suits you, that you love, and that more importantly loves you back.
Ooh, big one. Big star, exclamation point, mic drop. Yes, all of it. Sorry, that was annoying for a moment.
Shouting at people like usual. Are you my children?
After today, I might be. I don't know. Like, adopt me, please. I need my people. I need my community.
I've already thought about that. Here's my parents right here. Did you see them?
Yeah.
It's mom and dad.
It's so funny. We have the same dad. Wow.
We are sisters.
Don't you?
People are going to be like, what on earth is happening? They're like, that's the last time we let Megan and Cardi B have a show together.
What? We already had that one in the sales boards in the Discord.
Yeah.
What was the certified creep 7 days a week?
Yeah. So Gabrielle and I remade the lyrics to a very popular song featuring those two artists, but we geared it at sales prospecting, and it was really, but you had to be there.
They want a meeting. I'm trying to set it. Yes.
I can't remember what my lyrics were, but these were gold.
They were gold. No, I promise you, when I get ready in the morning, because I listen to WAP in the morning, like, and I'm like, I really need to like figure out the lyrics for it to be like sales development, and just like put it on LinkedIn. Why not?
Because just the first few beats of the song make me feel confident. If you're not like getting into it before you pause, like you're missing out.
Big time. Well, Nikki, we're coming up. I already told you, I was like, listen, we bookmark an hour. I was like, we're going to go the hour. Wow. And I'm glad we did, because there was so much that you shared. And I think there's one thing, kind of wrapping it up, the experience that you had in San Francisco. I think there's one part of it, which was like, you were ready to receive those messages, right? Mm-hmm. Like you were ready, you were open to it, because you could have gotten the information and been like, nah. But you were open to it. Like you attracted that to yourself, and you took action on it as well. And I think again, it's like a full circle moment because I feel like I had that experience just looking at your content earlier this year, right? Initially, like I didn't believe in myself, and I was a hater for a moment, just for a moment until I took a drive. And I just remember, I think I was just telling this to Sam Himbry at Sales Hacker when we were preparing for this, and I was driving down the road, and I was just like, Nikki Ivey doesn't even know who I am. Like, what is wrong? I was like, yeah, like, and I just realized that it was more so a reflection on my inability to see myself as capable. It had anything to do with anybody else. And so in that moment of like, oh wow, like I'm actually the one who's holding myself back. And if anything, like Nikki's showing a model, like she's done it. Like I can learn from her. So like, let me just yeah, let me be a stand. Hell yeah. So, so that's why I said, it's like a full circle moment because I think just like seeing you, whether it's in these communities with we didn't talk about SDR defenders. I'm gonna have you on another time. We'll talk about it. But like, seeing with SDR defenders, like reading your content, I mean, everything about you is just like bright and luminous and passionate and inspiring, and you're just like set apart. And I appreciate you for being who you are and for expressing yourself and for having grown from the experiences that you had as well. So I was just thinking like, in you being yourself and allowing folks to, and sharing yourself, it's a multiplier effect, right? So whether it's at the company that you're at, or if it's in the communities that you're in, or if it's just somebody like, passing you by, like with your hat, right? Like, it's like there's something so spectacular about you. So I'm just like so happy that we've had this chance to like spend time together.
I have to tell you, I don't have anything that you don't have. There's nothing you see in me that I don't see in you. And I mean that. And that's been the case from when I first encountered you. I first encountered you in the Sales Brother and Sisterhood Slack channel, because for a while there was a preponderance of males. And you were in there, and I was like, oh, another woman. And then when I creeped up on your profile and I saw all this sales management experience, and that's SDR leadership is like, besides SDRs and maybe neck and neck, right? One of the hardest jobs in this business, and that you have been doing it successfully and have this confidence. I wanted to be in your orbit too. So it was only a matter of time.
Look at us, we're in the orbit. We're in the stars right now.
Welcome to our galaxy, everyone. And so, yeah, I'm just excited for you. All these, like, so much is going to continue to happen for you. I'm so glad that you're at Gong on this big stage. I'm so glad that you're hosting this show. I think you're the best person to do it of the folks that I'm following out there. And the sky is the limit for you. And we love to see it.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to close up, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know some people had questions. I'm sorry. I was selfish. Selfish with these questions. I had to get my time with Nikki. But next time around, we're going to do it. But yes, again, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Bye, y'all. Please follow SDR Defenders.